Coming down the aisle, the podcast tag team champions of the world, the Rage and Blaze Show. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Rage and Blaze Show. I'm Rage.
And I am Blaze.
And we are here today. We are going to be talking about Wrestlemania 2.
From 1986.
But before we get to that, we have a couple more things to talk about. For one, we have a correction on the last show. I accidentally, and it was pointed out to me by a listener, but I accidentally said that Barry Windham was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Obviously, I meant the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
What? Barry Windham wasn't a football star?
No, Barry Windham was not a football star.
Well,
he was a professional wrestling.
That's news to me.
Yeah, so that was my bad. Want to thank Adam, he's listening, for pointing that out to me. Also, we would like to also address the big news in wrestling this week.
Well, I also am pretty sure Adam called you an idiot.
He did call me an idiot, and I will deal with that later. So anyhow, the big news this week is the shocking news of The Undertaker announcing his retirement. So he had 30 plus years in the business, and he has one of the most iconic characters in wrestling history. And I'd like to know, Blaze, what is your opinion, and why don't you share your favorite Undertaker match?
My favorite Undertaker match would be either or of Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels. Those matches were absolutely fantastic. Nobody brought the best out of Undertaker than Shawn Michaels.
So obviously, you're thinking either WrestleMania 25 or WrestleMania 26. Do you want to pick one, or do you think they're just equally as great?
I'm going to go with the first one. I think the first one, they're equally as great, but first one's the first time. Yeah, the first time, probably. WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker. Fantastic matches, both of them.
Fair enough. Well, I'm going to go a different route, although I do think the wrestling was phenomenal in those two matches. Phenomenal. But my favorite, this is kind of more of a favorite Undertaker moment. I don't know if it was really considered a great match, but it was one of those oh shit moments in wrestling. And I'm going to have to go with the 1998 King of the Ring, when The Undertaker threw Mankind off the top of the Hell in a Cell. And then it wasn't enough for him to get thrown off the top of the cell. Mankind gets up off the gurney, climbs back up the cell, and what does he do? Undertaker throws him through the Hell in a Cell onto the ring.
Wasn't there tax involved as well?
There was tax at the end of the match that Mankind poured tax, and guess who got the blunt of the tax? It wasn't The Undertaker.
Oh, no, Undertaker don't take those kind of bumps.
Oh, it was Mankind. It was disgusting. You had the tooth poking out of Mankind's lip. It is seriously one of the most shocking and memorable moments in wrestling, and I just like to say thank you to The Undertaker for those moments, because he had a lot of moments that just awed the crowd, but I'd say that'd have to be the top of my list.
A wrestling icon, one of the best. Now, I do have a little bit of rumor news. Undertaker has said that he may continue, but only in those cinematic style matches that like he did in the new WrestleMania. So he's not fully retiring, but he's done with the actual just normal wrestling matches.
Okay, so I'm kind of glad you brought this up, because now I'm about to be a Debbie Downer. It really bothers me that was his last match, was a cinematic boneyard match. To me,
but it won't be his last match.
Okay, well, if he goes
his last
further,
match would be the match before that.
Okay, which would be John Cena. So you're calling the Boneyard match not a match?
Well, if he's continuing, And we wouldn't call it the last one if he continues and does more matches like that.
Fair enough. I just think an icon like that. You know, to be honest, unfortunately, there were some botches, and it was a little, it was a little off-putting. But the Roman Reigns match really should have been his final match. Not really because of the match itself. I'm sure he could have had a better match. My reasoning for it was because they gave the iconic ending to the match where he laid his jacket down, his hat on top of the jacket. He went outside, kissed on Michelle McCool, and he left, and he raised his arm up with the fist in the air, and he went down into the entrance ramp. So, to me, that was a better goodbye, and I wish that would have been the goodbye for The Undertaker. Not saying I'm not happy to have seen The Undertaker again. I'm just saying that was a better ending of a career. But I think this happens more often than not. Wrestlers ruin their retirement matches. I mean, I remember Ric Flair fighting Shawn Michaels. I'd have to look it up to remember which WrestleMania it was. But Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels had an epic final match, and you had the whole Ric Flair crying in the ring and getting super kicked like Shawn was putting the old man down. And to me, it was such a beautiful ending to a career, but what does Ric Flair do? He goes to TNA. He goes and does, and now I think he's back in WWE. I think he was just on the program on this past week. But my point is they really ruin their end of their career matches, don't they?
Yeah, a little bit. I agree that Roman Reigns would have been, that was a great way to end it. Personally, I felt like he should have been done after Brock Lesnar. Now, I personally wasn't the biggest fan of him beating, Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker.
I agree.
But I've always felt like when his streak ended, that should have been the end of The Undertaker.
And I would agree with you on that, other than I liked the way he left the ring with the Roman Reigns.
Oh, no, I agree. It was a great moment.
Match.
It was a great moment.
Yeah, it wasn't the match that I say... And if you watch the Last Ride documentary on WWE Network, he talks about part of the reason he came back to face John Cena was because he wasn't happy with the Roman Reigns match. There were some botches in there. There were some screw-ups. He didn't want to end on that note.
Fair enough.
But, obviously, that was the plan for him to end on that note, obviously, with the way that match ended. So, anyhow, now that we got that all out of the way...
They are going to be so ecstatic when they hear this.
Yeah. So, we just wanted to give a shout-out. I might as well, at the point that we are, give a big shout-out to my middle daughter, Scarlett, for being a fan, because
for hating wrestling and being very annoyed
for telling me that she hates wrestling and that it's too violent and she don't like watching two people kill each other. Does not help that we just recently on the WWE Network watched that Hell in a Cell match with the kids.
You forced her to watch that hell.
So that was kind of one of her opening watching of wrestling, and seeing a man fall from the top of the cage, and she thought he was dead. So I suppose I might have scarred her for life.
Well, I met Mick Foley. Went to one of his stand-ups, or essentially him telling stories from that. He felt like he was dead, too. So she's not completely wrong.
I think everybody thought he was dead. Now, I've read a little bit about that match, and it was actually planned for him to do that stunt. So, if anybody doesn't know, that stunt was pre-planned.
Whoa.
But
wrestling...
hold on now.
Real.
But, well, you want the realism of wrestling? Well, let me get you to the next part. When he fell through the top of the cage, that was not planned.
Oh, he was just supposed to land on the cage and not through the cage, huh?
Yeah, the cage gave out. And he gave us a very, very memorable moment.
Ow.
That was not supposed to happen.
Poor Mick Foley. I feel so sad for Foley's mama.
Foley's baby boy.
Miss Foley's baby boy.
Okay.
And my mom loved Foley.
Yes, our mom, well, she loved Dude Love.
Well, yeah.
Because she is a hippie,
yeah.
amongst hippies.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's get to WrestleMania 2. It was broadcasted April 7th, 1986. Just to let you know, this is the first and only WrestleMania that was broadcasted in multiple cities. So each city had a set card, and each city had a main event in the city.
Oh.
Yes. So we had New York, LA, and Chicago. We have 3 different cities we're going to watch tonight at WrestleMania 2. It must not have worked out as they planned because they have never done it since. This is also the first, last, and only WrestleMania to be broadcasted on a Monday. Why? I don't know. I was 2 in 1986. I don't know why they did this. But it was broadcasted on a Monday. It's the only time a WrestleMania didn't broadcast on a Sunday until this year when the quarantine edition WrestleMania came out.
It was a 2-part.
And it was a 2-part, and they had half of it on Saturday, but they still had it on a Sunday. But this is the only one ever on a Monday.
Now, the first thing I noticed watching the intro, it sounds like porn music.
It very does. It actually looks like they went a step backwards in the decade of music because
70s porn music.
Yeah, because this sounded like 70s porn as opposed to 80s music that we talked about. Yeah, that we talked about in WrestleMania 1. So the music is actually a little a step back, it felt like.
They wanted to go retro for the second one.
Obviously. So then we also get, which we didn't get at all in WrestleMania 1, we got the opening was announced by Mr. McMahon. So then you get to hear him welcome everybody to WrestleMania. That is iconic video they show all the time that you would have assumed as a wrestling fan, would have been the opening of the very first WrestleMania, but it wasn't.
No, this already looks like bigger production values, bigger, and they did a slight step up with the singing of America the Beautiful by introducing Ray Charles.
This is true. We get Ray Charles instead of a Mean Gene Okerlund.
Let's just say Ray Charles, slightly better talent at singing.
Very much. He definitely sang the hell out of it. And during his performance, there's clips. There's pictures of America the Beautiful. You have picture of, I believe I saw the Grand Canyon, and I believe I saw, what's some iconic, I'm losing it here. What all did we see in that opening?
We saw Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, and at the very end of this opening, you've got Hulk Hogan's picture with this digitalized fireworks.
Yes.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the first match, which actually takes place in New York. Now, keep in mind, this is 3 different cities, so we're going to be jumping through 3 different cities, and we'll try to keep you updated on which city each match takes place in. But the first show starts off New York City, and it is between the Magnificent Morocco with Mr. Fuji in his corner against Paul Orndorff, Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. Now, Blaze, what did you think of this match?
Well, it was cool seeing Mr. Fuji again.
Yes.
Or is it Fiji or Fuji?
Fuji.
Fuji? Okay.
Fiji is a place you can visit.
I do remember Mr. Fuji from my childhood. But first, can we talk about that interview with Rowdy Piper?
Oh, yeah. Before the match began, I apologize. We kind of jumped ahead of ourselves. Before the match began, we got a Mean Gene Okerlund interview, similar to what we got in WrestleMania 1, with the difference being this was an interview about a match that's going to take place later in the pay-per-view, as opposed to a match right then and there. So we got our first glimpse in a WrestleMania of Roddy Piper on the microphone, which if you listen to our episode 1, you know we are huge fans of Roddy Piper, as is Grandmommy, which I would like to make my second correction. That is my grandmommy, not my grandmother. Okay, Mom? Grandmommy, not grandmother. So I apologize. I did not mean no disrespect. I was just in the middle of a conversation and just explaining the situation about the ties we have to Roddy Piper.
Mom torched you on that one, huh?
Yeah, our mother listened to the podcast, and I got a lynching on the cell phone.
Whoa. We don't need to say such controversial things, kind of like Roddy Piper during that interview.
Yeah, so Roddy Piper gives a pretty good interview.
Very colorful interview.
Yeah, he says some racy things during the interview. Keep in mind, this is 1986, so be careful when you watch this. But he does say some things, because he is going to be facing Mr. T in a boxing match, and let's just say he gets a little racy on his talking about Mr. T. So anyhow, that happened. So moving back on to the match. So instead of getting the Mean Gene interview like we did in WrestleMania 1, the match actually starts, the bell rings, and we hear an audio clip while these two men are already wrestling in the ring. We hear an audio clip of their interview they had with, I'm assuming, Mean Gene Okerlund, but I don't think you heard the interviewer. You just heard the voices of the wrestlers about what they're going to do in this match and talking. But it was just interesting that they just kind of skipped it. Considering this is almost an hour longer of a pay-per-view than WrestleMania 1, and they didn't even take the time to do the interviews because they're already, this is the first WrestleMania, they're already building up to matches later on, and they want to get you excited about the main events as opposed to the match that's currently happening. And I'd also like to point out that Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, is in the opening bout in WrestleMania 2 when he was actually in the tag team main event in WrestleMania 1. So his star is obviously already, maybe fallen a little, but it was a decent match.
It's kind of a big deal to be in the first match of WrestleMania as well.
I suppose that's not always
as big a deal in the main event, but it's still kind of a big deal to open it up. You're supposed to have something. I suppose you're right. I suppose that's not always a demotion. Sometimes they do start WrestleMania with a bang. It just depends on the WrestleMania, I suppose. But no, this match was not a bang.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't a bad match, but I think this was more of a street fight. This was more of a brawl. They obviously was trying to sell some kind of feud going on.
It did feel a little bit bigger than most of the matches of WrestleMania 1. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, I felt like WrestleMania 1 felt almost like a house show, like a slightly upgraded version of one. So I have noticed a little bit, like this show feels a little bit bigger than WrestleMania 1 already. They recognize that they have something big with WrestleMania. And
Vince McMahon at the beginning of the show mentions that this is the greatest sports spectacle, or however he worded it, pretty much saying that we're already a big deal. This is WrestleMania 2, we're already a big deal.
Yeah, and WrestleMania 1, I don't think they looked at it as the Super Bowl of wrestling until the second one.
Obviously, this is definitely, we'd like to point that out, this is the equivalent of the Super Bowl in the wrestling world. There's no argument there. If you've made it to WrestleMania, if you made it to the card on WrestleMania, you must have been a pretty big deal that year.
That is the dream of every wrestler.
Or a celebrity.
or celebrity.
So anyhow, this match kind of gets out of hand. They fall out of the ring. They kind of get into a skirmish, get out of the ring, and the referee rings the bell. There's some confusion. They don't know what's going on. Turns out it's a double countout. So they definitely are selling a feud going on at this time in 1986. There must have been some bad blood between those two wrestlers, and they're definitely trying to sell us on that.
Yeah, it was a fine match. Weird ending. Like they didn't even know who won. There was some confusion. Then they do an interview with Mr. T, and then they announce who won during that interview. So there was like,
yeah, they moved on to the Mr. T interview before they announced what happened in the match. So kind of got ahead of themselves there.
We had to look online to see how the match actually ended. We wasn't sure if there was some cheating involved that we missed. He hits him, which was it? Was it Paul Orndorff gets hit on the ring post?
Yeah.
And we weren't sure if maybe that was a disqualification.
But they called it double countout according to the records.
We just didn't know. And we had to look it up to find out how the match actually ended. But apparently they were out for 10 seconds and double countout.
Yeah. So we're on to the next match. It's our first title match of the night. It is for the WWF Intercontinental Championship. This one is going to be against George the Animal Steele versus the champion, the Macho Man, Randy Savage. We get a little bit of an interview as he's coming down the ring. Talks about Macho Madness. Snap into a Slim Jim. Oh, yeah.
You're getting a little too far ahead of yourself. That's not for many, many years.
Okay, so he doesn't get the Slim Jim sponsorship till later on in life, but that's absolutely what I always love, is that voice of the Macho Man, and I always kind of tie it in with the Slim Jim commercials.
It's sad that the biggest thing you think of about Macho Man Randy Savage, a legend in the WWF, is snap into a Slim Jim.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I absolutely love Macho Man, but it's easy to say snap into a Slim Jim. Ooh, yeah. It's just easy to say.
He would be turning in his grave.
Oh, no, I'm sure he made plenty of money from Slim Jim. So anyhow, we get this match, and from the get-go, we get George the Animal Steele doing some kooky stuff, which made him so great, fun to watch, and he starts chasing Macho Man out of the ring.
He was a very hairy bastard. And I really liked how he tried to show everyone what the inside of a turnbuckle looks like.
Yeah, he does that later on in the match, obviously. But there's definitely some back and forth in this match. And you've got Miss Elizabeth, the beautiful Miss Elizabeth, gets involved in this match. And you've even got, on commentating, we haven't brought this up, but you got Vince McMahon, and you've got a special guest commentator, Susan St. James. She is known for the sitcom McMillan and Wife and Kate and Allie. And I guess she was an actor in that time, or an actress in that time, and she's the special guest commentator along with Vince McMahon.
Never heard of her.
Neither have I. Once again, this is another one of those we had to Google to figure out who she was, because obviously we were 2 and 4 at this time.
Okay.
So obviously we were a little young when this came out. So some of the celebrities in these early pay-per-views, we might not quite know all of them. Just, obviously the main ones, the big ones.
I should know more. I was 4.
Obviously. So anyhow, we get George the Animal Steele. He has himself some fun. He decides to rip open a turnbuckle, and he takes the stuffing out of the turnbuckle, and he starts ripping apart and throwing it in Macho Man's face. Just really shoving it in there and just really getting really nasty with Macho Man. So that was some fun stuff, but then Macho Man obviously uses Miss Elizabeth to help him with the distraction, and what does he do? He gets the upper hand, and we get to see the Macho Man go up top and do his flying elbow. Absolutely love that move. The flying elbow off the top rope. Surprisingly, though, what does George the Animal Steele do?
Well, another first for WrestleMania. That is the first time in WrestleMania we've got to see someone kick out of a finishing move.
Yeah, and they even announced during this WrestleMania, Vince McMahon pointed out that this might be the first time that anybody has ever kicked out of the flying elbow.
Yeah.
Or at least Macho Man's flying elbow.
There is only one flying elbow.
Obviously, he is the
Macho
one.
Man.
So anyhow, he's got to resort to different measures, and he has to actually use the ropes as leverage to get the pin 1, 2, 3 on George the Animal Steele. He didn't like that very much.
Well, I think it's well within Macho Man's rights. It's perfectly okay to get on the second rope.
Well, and that's exactly what he did, and then he hightailed it out of there with the security guards. Him and Miss Elizabeth got out of there. What does George the Animal Steele do? He rips open another turnbuckle, and as he rips that one open, he decides to chase the referee out of the arena for his incompetence for not being able to correctly call the match.
Well, obviously he has those security guards. George the Animal Steele is insane. He's just attacking everything, attacking the turnbuckles. He is just not well. Somebody should call something on him.
Animal control, maybe. Because that man was insane. And obviously we got to see it here at WrestleMania 2. He was so fun to watch.
I was worried about Macho Man's life.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? He got out of there. He had about 10 security guards helping him get out of there. So I think he was fine.
Well, thank God for that.
And I'd like to also point out something about George the Animal Steele is that is almost the hairiest man I have ever met in my life, but thankfully I have met Mr. Dustin, and that man, whew, that is the hairiest man I have ever met in my life. Little shout out to Dustin there.
Do you normally look at men naked?
Only the sexy ones.
Well, that didn't help you at all.
All right, let's move on to our next match.
His marriage is a cover, everyone.
So before the next match begins, we get another Mean Gene Okerlund interview, and this time it is with Bill Frolic of the Atlanta Falcons and Big John Studd. They're going to have a WWF versus NFL Battle Royal later on in the night. So obviously there's a theme here of them promoting the future matches of this pay-per-view more importantly than the matches that are currently about ready to happen.
Yeah, they were promoting the Rowdy Piper match quite a bit, so pretty excited about that.
Yeah, so this is something that they really do in future WrestleManias, and we obviously see it kind of begins here, where they want to hype you up for the main event matches coming up later in the show.
Yeah.
Okay, so here is our next match. We have George Wells versus Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, what'd you think of this match?
I really enjoyed this match. It was great seeing Jake the Snake again. I've never heard of George Wells personally.
Yeah, he's kind of fell off in history, hasn't he?
Yeah, but Jake the Snake is now on AEW, so not wrestling, of course, but he's been managing and very interesting on AEW. I've watched a bit of it.
Now, does he still have Damien?
No. In fact, I don't think they call him Jake the Snake. I think he's just Jake Roberts. I haven't noticed the Snake at all, at least what I've seen. I haven't watched a lot of it, but he's been managing another wrestler. I'd have to look it up. I can't remember who it is. He's a big, tall guy.
Okay, so moving on. Actually, this match actually was more George Wells, believe it or not, than Jake the Snake. He had most of the moves go in his favor until towards the end Jake gets the upper hand and, of course, hits his signature DDT.
Oh, yeah. No one does that DDT better than Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yeah, so, and winning the match isn't just enough for Jake the Snake. He has to pull Damien out of the bag, and he pretty much chokes George Wells with the giant the giant python, Damien.
Well, I just feel like George Wells should have just, relaxed a little bit. Jake was just trying to show off his snake. He's a really nice looking snake.
So you're saying this was just a show and tell for him?
Absolutely. George just made way too big of a deal about it.
Right. If you're allowed to show off your dog or cat, what's wrong with showing off your snake?
That is one beautiful snake. Of course he should be showing it off.
And he likes flaunting it around to everybody, doesn't he?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that is the end of that match, and now we are about to move on to the main event for New York.
All right.
Okay, so before this next match, or I suppose boxing match, happens, they decide to show a clip from Saturday Night Main Event, kind of showing us the back history between the rival between Roddy Piper and Mr. T.
Yeah, it felt more like the WrestleManias we know and love, pay-per-views we know and love, showing you what happened on the shows before the main event on pay-per-view.
Yeah, so this is definitely one of the WrestleMania first that we'd like to point out. This is the first time we've gotten any kind of clip like that. So then we, from there, we go into a Mean Gene Okerlund interview to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, brother.
So he talks about the Hulkamaniacs. So it's starting to come, Hulkamania is about to run wild, brother. So
did you happen to mention who was interviewing him? Jesse the Body Ventura.
Oh, it wasn't a Mean Gene. I apologize.
It was Jesse the Body Ventura.
It was Jesse the Body Ventura interviewing him. I apologize. You know what? I completely forgot. These guys are all in different cities. So you're going to have different people interviewing in different locations, just like we're about to probably get new commentators once we move on to the Chicago portion of the show.
Which is what happens after this next match we're about to talk about.
Yes, so let's go into the boxing match. We get Roddy Piper. He comes out with Cowboy Bob Orton, and Mr. T comes out with Smokin' Joe Frazier. And they are announced by a special commentator, or I guess a special announcer, which is Joan Rivers.
Yeah, finally a celebrity I know.
Yeah, so this is obviously a boxing match. So rounds 1 and 2 went to Piper.
Yeah.
He was definitely making the moves. Mr. T was on the defense for 2 rounds. He even knocked Mr. T down once. But the problem is Roddy Piper is a heel, so Roddy Piper had to do what heels do, and he was definitely pushing the buttons and doing some things that he probably shouldn't have been doing.
Rage, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Okay, Blaze. So anyhow, we get some cream on his face to make it more slippery, some grease. We get Cowboy Bob Orton, I think in between the second and third round, literally throws a bucket of ice at Mr. T.
I think Cowboy Bob Orton just noticed Mr. T was very hot.
Really? It probably was an advantage. It was probably an advantage.
He was helping him out. I don't know why you saw that as a danger or a problem.
So then in between, or we get to round 3 and things definitely change. Mr. T starts really putting the hammer down on Roddy Piper. He starts laying some blows and he knocks Piper out twice. One of them times literally out of the ring.
Well, and then the end of the match where Piper pushes the referee down and then remembers that boxing is a stupid sport and decides to body slam Mr. T. And they disqualify him. This is wrestling. And they disqualify him for using a wrestling move. I think it's hypocrisy.
Well, it was billed as a boxing match, so you're not supposed to do that.
Boxing's dumb.
So definitely round 4 was, they had an exchange of blows where each guy literally stood in the middle of the ring, letting each other punch themselves until Piper got frustrated, did what he did, body slam Mr. T, and then all pandemonium breaks loose. And the match gets awarded to Mr. T by disqualification.
He did what a wrestler should do.
So he went back to his instincts and he did what he had to do. So that is the end of the New York portion of WrestleMania 2. And now we are going to be moving on to the Chicago portion. Okay, so now we're into the Chicago portion of the show, and at the beginning, they decide to announce a new special guest announcer for the Chicago portion. Her name is Kathy Lee Crosby. Once again, we had to Google her. Turns out she was the co-host of a television series called That's Incredible, and she played Wonder Woman in a made-for-TV movie before Linda Carter in her starring role as Wonder Woman in the TV show.
Don't believe it.
Well, believe it. It's true. So then we... Do what?
Fake news.
Fake news. Well, it's kind of cemented in history. So anyhow, so then we get the announcement that Gorilla Monsoon and Mean Gene Okerlund would be joining her as commentators. So we got 3 commentators for the Chicago portion of the show. So, moving on, the first match is between the Fabulous Moolah. She is the WWF Women's Champion, and I didn't hear them call it the Lady Championship this time.
No.
It was for the WWF Women's Championship, Fabulous Moolah, she takes on Velvet McIntyre.
Never heard of Velvet McIntyre, and I checked it out. Fabulous Moolah was wrestling in 1986 at 63 years old.
And she wasn't just wrestling, she was the champion. So what does that tell you about the women's division in 1986?
Well, unlike in the 90s, they actually focused on wrestlers and not divas.
Okay, so this match starts off pretty quick. Fabulous Moolah does some flips on Velvet, and she makes quick work of her. The match lasts all but a minute and a half.
Yeah, it was. They actually were really into the match. Actually, like Fabulous Moolah, she was quick for a 60-some-year-old woman.
I'll tell you what, she showed some fight at that age, and she whooped that girl's butt.
And she had, I believe, my mom's haircut from back then.
It looks like, it definitely looks like that haircut was in style in 1986. Wink, wink, mother. That hairstyle was in 1986.
Love you, Mom.
Also like to point out this was on a 62, 63, what you said, woman. Which means that it might not actually have been the right hairstyle for 1986. So
it wasn't poofed out enough.
No, wasn't poofed out enough. So anyhow, so that match was quick. So then we get another match. The next match is Corporal Kirchner versus Nikolai Volkov with classy Freddie Blassie in his corner.
Yeah, I've never heard of Corporal Kirchner either.
He comes out in like a kind of a camo outfit, carrying the American flag. It was definitely USA versus USSR. It was one of them type of matches that you're supposed to just cheer for the American.
Yeah. And I was very disappointed by this match. He cheated! He used a foreign object! I was very upset!
Actually, he could have been disqualified twice in this match. First time, he pushed the referee down, no disqualification, and then classy Freddie Blassie tries to toss in his cane, and Kirchner intercepts it.
Oh, no, he threw it to him. What are you talking about?
No, I think it was intended for Nikolai Volkov.
No.
Whacks Nikolai over the head while the referee is down from Kishner pushing him down.
Kishner's just a cheating loser.
And he wins 1, 2, 3. So that's the representation of America we get in this match in 1986.
Uh-huh. Cheating.
All right, so moving on to the main event of the Chicago portion. Okay, so here is our main event for Chicago. It is a 20-man battle royal involving WWF wrestlers versus NFL players. But it is every man for themselves, so remember that. So we get Mean Gene Okerlund takes the mic and announces all the combatants. And we're going to go through this. The NFL players included Jimbo Covert, Bill Frolic, Russ Francis, Ernie Holmes, Harvey Martin, William the Refrigerator Perry. The WWF stars included Andre the Giant, Ted Arcidi, Tony Atlas, the Hart Foundation, so Bret Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
That was a big one.
The Killer Bees, which was B. Brian Blair and Jim Brunzel, Hillbilly Jim, the Iron Sheik, King Tonga, Pedro Morales, Bruno Sammartino, Danny Spivey, and Big John Studd. So what'd you think of this Battle Royal, Blaze?
It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I did not realize that the Hart Foundation was around this early in WrestleMania history. So seeing Bret the Hitman Hart was a real treat.
Absolutely. And you can tell the respect they gave him already early in his career because
they were at the end with Andre the Giant, one of the main four. I don't even know who the third or fourth one was, but
yeah, it was hard to keep up with these names. A lot of these NFL players are before our time, and I didn't hear not one name for the Oakland Raiders, Los Angeles Raiders, Vegas Raiders, or the Cincinnati Bengals. So it's kind of hard to keep track when they're not one of our teams.
Well, I mean, we did get quite a bit of Dub Bears.
Dub Bears, that's right.
Dub Bears.
So anyhow, this was a fun match. I think it was Tonga was the first one eliminated in this match. And as Blaze had said, the final three came down to the Hart Foundation and Andre the Giant. There was some fun little back and forth where the Hart Foundation was teaming up to try to beat up on Andre. But obviously, Andre got the best and hit Jim the Anvil Neidhart out of the ring and then grabbed Bret the Hitman Hart, which probably before the Hitman Monkier. And
no, they called him the Hitman.
Did they call him the Hitman?
They described him. They said it was Neidhart and Hitman.
Okay, well, they threw him out, and he threw him into Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
It was a really fun match. Probably one of the few times that a giant wins a Royal Rumble, or Battle Royal in this case. Because, nowadays, very rarely does your big man win a Royal Rumble.
Yeah, they always get ganged up on and eventually taken out. There was another fun back and forth between the Refrigerator, William Perry.
Oh, yeah, that was a fun...
And Big John Studd. Big John Studd eliminates William Perry. William Perry reaches out to kind of congratulate him and give a handshake. And it's a trick, obviously. You don't shake the hand of somebody outside of a Battle Royal or a Royal Rumble. That is 101. It's not going to end well because he pulls him out of the ring, tricks Big John Studd and pulls him out of the ring, which was interesting because you really kind of thought it was going to come down to Big John Studd and Andre the Giant. They were definitely the two biggest guys in the room, and when you put a ring full of 20 men in there and you have Andre standing tall in that ring, my God, it really just shows you the scale of how big Andre the Giant really was.
Yeah, he was a massive man. He was huge.
Having a post-interview with Rowdy Piper with Vince McMahon. So he gives this interview, talks about how he's happy that he don't have to follow along with stipulations of the match, that because he did not get knocked out by Mr. T. Instead, he got disqualified, but since he didn't get knocked out, he feels that he shouldn't have to follow along with the stipulations that they made in this match.
Yeah, it was a pretty good interview. I love watching Roddy Piper. Once again, he gets a little racy, but he's playing the ultimate heel. He is. He's playing the ultimate heel. I love the way he delivers his promos. I love the way he talks. He has this way of, he'll just be talking through an interview and it's like, no one can touch me. He has this like high pitch register that's really fun. I love the way he delivers his promos.
Yeah, and in the first WrestleMania, you notice that really Hogan's the only one that gets on the mic and sounds, you could just tell
like
he's electric, he's a star. And in this WrestleMania, you finally get other people that get to talk. And sure enough, we get Roddy Piper, which is one of the best. And so it's kind of funny because he was in WrestleMania 1, but he never got on the mic. We finally get to hear him on the mic in this WrestleMania, and he sounds great. He's an absolute legend.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites on the mic, to be honest with you.
And don't forget, you can follow along with us on any of these WrestleManias. They are all on WWE Network. Download the app on your phone, Xbox, PlayStation, doesn't matter. I'm sure you can find the app. So, moving on, they went to Chicago next, and they did a post-interview with Jimbo Covert, who was a member of the Battle Royal we just watched. And he feels he was screwed over. He feels that he was helping somebody else. I think it was Refrigerator Perry he was helping, and he said, and then I got eliminated for helping, And then Mean Gene goes on to interview the Iron Sheik and ask him his opinions about the Battle Royal, and then after that we move on to the next match. So, the next match is for the WWF Tag Team Champions of the World, and announced in the ring, which I kind of felt was a little disrespectful because these are the champions after all, but you have the Dream Team, Brutus Beefcake, still not the Barber, and Greg the Hammer Valentine, and they are brought out with Johnny Valiant. Now, I found it a little disrespectful. These are the tag team champions, and they don't get an intro, but I mean, you would think being the champions, you would kind of come out second. You'd be more of a bigger deal, have some entrance music, but that's not what we got here.
And it's not like these aren't stars. I mean, this is Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine. Both are in the WWE Hall of Fame.
Obviously, they both are, and they're absolute legends. So then we get music. We get, like, the British music going, and you get the tag team of the British Bulldogs. And that consists of Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid. They are accompanied by the Captain Lou Albano and Ozzy Osbourne.
Looking very, very 80s and not scary at all.
It looks healthy, though.
Sure.
I mean, blonde hair, just looks healthy. I mean, growing up, I love Black Sabbath, love Ozzy Osbourne. I saw him at Ozfest several times.
I've seen him at Ozfest as well.
And, he's obviously older and obviously...
Drink.
He probably did.
He did. Drugs and drinking, yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on.
He looked a little rough. I mean, he still performed really well, but he always looked rough when I saw him. But, Father Time and all that got to him, and drugs and alcohol. Yes. So... But anyhow, he looks really good, really healthy here.
He was slightly more coherent at the end of the match when they had an interview with him.
Yeah, they did. They interviewed him, but we're getting ahead of ourselves now because we really want to talk about this match because we gave our opinions on our favorite match so far at the end of part 1 of this podcast, and I'm already saying it here, and obviously I could change my mind before the end of this podcast, but this was an exciting match. This was a wrestling clinic by legends. 3 out of the 4 people in the ring are inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame.
And one of them I've never heard of.
Well,
other than I've heard of the British or the British Bulldogs, I've just never.
Yeah,
I don't remember him very much.
You knew Davey Boy Smith was a part of the British Bulldog tag team. You just couldn't remember the other. Yeah, the other name, which would be Dynamite Kid.
I remember Davey Boy Smith more in the Hart Foundation. I knew he was part of a tag team called the British Bulldogs, but I remember his time in the Hart Foundation.
So you remember him more as Bret Hart's brother-in-law, as opposed to his career before any of that.
Yeah.
Which was more into the 90s.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely an amazing, phenomenal wrestler. Just as a tag team, that was a little early for us.
Yeah, I mean, we watched wrestling when we were little kids with our stepbrother Tim, and we watched, Ultimate Warrior, Hulk Hogan,
Sergeant Slaughter,
some of that,
Jake the Snake.
But there was a lot of that we probably watched, and I mean, that was the 80s, and I was less than 10 years old.
Yeah, we were young. We remember the big names in history. And obviously British Bulldog is a big name in history, but he was a tag team.
Well, he went on to have a bigger career, or, his career continued when we were watching it more regularly in the 90s, where I don't know what happened to the Dynamite Kid. Is that his name?
Yeah, it says I looked him up. It looks like he retired in like 96. So I'm guessing, his career
stuff.
I'm guessing after the tag team thing was over, his career just didn't take off like Davey Boy Smith's did. Mm-hmm. But I guess marrying into the legendary Hart family, sure helped his career very much. Now I'm not taking anything away from him. He is a phenomenal wrestler.
It was a great match by all involved.
But I'm just saying, having friends like that, I'm sure helped his career.
Yep, definitely agree. So let's talk about this match.
Okay, so this match was just amazing. It was a wrestling clinic. We absolutely loved this match, and it's already skyrocketed to the top of my list of favorite matches of WrestleMania 2. These guys, it was a back and forth. They knew what they were doing.
Really good moves. I really enjoyed the vertical suplex was that Davey Boy?
I think it was Davey Boy Smith did it on, I believe it was Greg the Hammer Valentine. He lifted up and did a vertical suplex that just looked, and he held him up there for a couple seconds before he dropped him.
And there was also that gorilla press body slam that was really good.
Very good. There was one right off the top rope.
Just very clean, well done wrestling.
Yes, this is, to me, this is the type of wrestling that I absolutely love. This is just when guys can go back and forth and just put on a clinic like this. This is what I love about wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in the last episode I said my favorite match was the Macho Man match, and I feel like that's more because I absolutely love Macho Man. And it was a fun heel match because Macho Man kept running out of the ring and everything, where this one is a better match.
Oh, by far.
Really good wrestling in this one.
Yeah, and so the match ends with, I believe it was Davey Boy Smith throws...
Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Was it Greg the Hammer Valentine?
Yeah, because...
Throws him into the Dynamite Kid's head instead of the turnbuckle in the corner, and they have a headbutt, and that's how the match ends. Davey Boy Smith pins him, 1, 2, 3, and we have new WWF Tag Team Champions.
Now, I have things to say about this, Rage.
What's your problem?
So, Greg the Hammer Valentine, he was doing a pin, and he noticed that Davey Boy Smith was not doing very well. So he stopped that pin at the 2 count for him. He was being good, and then Davey Boy just throws him into another wrestler.
Oh, come on, Blaze.
He was trying to help him out.
It's a tag team match.
He was trying to help him out, and he just takes advantage and wins the match. And then poor Brutus, he's trying to stop this unfair pin, and he gets caught up in the ropes and he trips. I mean, it was just terrible ending, I must say.
Oh, come on
Such
now.
a good wrestling match. Terrible ending.
I think the correct team won. We have new champions. Congratulations to them. They have a post-interview after the match, and they interview Davey Boy. They interview Dynamite. They also interview Captain Lou Albano. We get to hear him on the mic, and then we get to hear Ozzy Osbourne speak, which sounds very Ozzy Osbourne-ish. Anybody who's heard Ozzy talk.
Except for you could understand him slightly better than
you could. Actually, it didn't sound as rubbish as it does now. He's kind of mumbled, whatever, but you could definitely understand his words, but you could still tell he talks like he sings, and he sings like he talks. That's Ozzy Osbourne.
Fair.
Something I'd like to point out that I noticed is that they had billed the WWF versus NFL Battle Royal as the main event of Chicago, but yet what we get as the real main event is the WWF Tag Team Championship match. Now, I'm okay with that being the main event, but why did they bill it in such a way and then still have another match in Chicago? I found that kind of odd.
Yeah, it was odd. My only theory is that you got Andre the Giant in it, you got the Hart Foundation in it, you also got the NFL stars in it, and if I'm not mistaken, you had some Chicago Bears in there, and wasn't it in 1985 that the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl and did the Super Bowl shuffle?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I'm not a Bears fan, so I can't really speak on that. But I'm just kind of confused because they mentioned that there was going to be a main event in each city. And so you had Roddy Piper, Mr. T, the main event. Then you have the NFL WWF Battle Royal as the main event. And then, of course, Hogan and Andre the Giant is the main event and in L.A. But it's just kind of odd to me that you would bill this as the main event, and all you had to do was make sure it was the last match in Chicago. But instead, they move on to the Tag Team Championship match, and that is actually the last match in Chicago before they move on to L.A. So to me, it was just kind of odd. Just the placing of the match, not really. I understand why the Battle Royal is the main event. It's just weird that they didn't, have them wrestle in that order.
Yeah, it might have been as simple as it was just easier to get everybody to show up. Like, it might have been just a scheduling thing because of the NFL players or something.
Maybe so. All right, so we're going to move on. I believe
I did just check. The Chicago Bears did win the Super Bowl. It was technically 1986, but as you know, the Super Bowl is always at the beginning of the year.
Well, this was April 7th, 1986. So this would have been after that Super Bowl.
It would have been literally right after the Chicago Bears won the Super Bowl.
Fair enough.
Super Bowl shuffle.
Okay, so now let's move on. We are going to be moving on to the LA portion of WrestleMania 2.
LA.
Okay, so we are on to the LA portion of the show where we get Jesse the Body Ventura. He introduces himself. He introduces Lord Alfred Hayes and the lovely Elvira. This is going to be our commentators for the LA portion of WrestleMania 2.
Yeah, it was nice seeing Elvira. I always liked Elvira.
Yeah, so giddy up, boom, bop, bow, bow. So here we go.
Elvira.
So here we go with the next match. We have Hercules Hernandez versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Now, this is just a regular singles match. No titles are on the line. But I'll tell you what, this was a lot better match than the Dragon had in WrestleMania 1, by far.
Well, he had a much better opponent this time.
Yeah, so this match starts off with Hercules using his brute strength to take over, but that doesn't last long because Ricky starts using his speed to start getting the upper hand.
Hercules definitely lived up to his name. He did a lot of good power moves. It was a pretty good display. I've never heard of Hercules Hernandez.
Oh, you don't remember Hercules Hernandez?
No, have you?
I actually don't remember the Hernandez part of his name, but I do remember the wrestler Hercules.
Oh.
But
are you sure it's the same guy?
You know what? I assumed it is. I mean, how many WWF wrestlers are going to be called Hercules?
Hercules is popular in myth and fiction, so it's very possible there's another guy who didn't have...
Well, I'll have to look it up, but I believe it's the Hercules that I remember as a kid, but...
Also, I believe we have a correction.
Oh, yes, we do have a correction. So when I was talking about the New York, Chicago, and LA portions of the show, I accidentally said that the LA portion of the show, the main event, was Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. It is actually Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy in a steel cage match for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship.
That's what we have to look forward to next pay-per-view we're watching.
Yes, our next podcast will be about WrestleMania 3, where you had the iconic Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant match.
Correct.
So, and we have a little bit of a special guest coming on for the very first time on our podcast. We will be welcoming Warren to the show.
Yeah, a giant amongst our family.
Yeah, so Warren is our cousin. He is 6'8". So we thought it would be befitting to ask him to join us on the iconic WrestleMania 3 where Andre faces Hulk Hogan, which I think Hogan is actually 6'8".
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So we're going to talk to him about being that big and everything, and we'll also talk about wrestling action figures on that show with him.
Yeah, he has a popular YouTube channel, Ohio Nerd, where he goes to toy shows and checks out different collectible toys.
Yeah, so anybody that's going to know anything about wrestling action figures, this is the guy to talk to. He definitely knows his figures and he knows about all sorts of figures, not just wrestling figures, but we will definitely talk to him about that, and that'll be on our next podcast.
All right.
So moving on, we had this match was very back and forth. It really was. It was a great match. There was one little botch in the match, though, where Hercules threw Ricky up against the ropes. He's supposed to come back, and they're supposed to do like a spinning power slam. And
we're not watching this now.
I'm sorry.
What is going on, Ray?
Somehow the TV got unpaused. So anyhow,
we have Ghost.
So he's supposed to do a running, spinning power slam. Hercules is supposed to pick him up and flip him and power slam him down. And for whatever reasoning, I don't know if the timing was off, but as Ricky started coming towards him, they didn't really connect. It kind of looked awkward. Ricky kind of stops right in front of him and then just, oddly lets him pick him up and slam him anyhow, but it didn't flow the way it was supposed to, work. So that I don't know if there was just a timing issue with the wrestlers or what happened there, but we did notice that during the match that there was just a little bit of a botch. But the rest of the match seemed to flow pretty good. It was a really good match with the exception of that one little stain on the match, and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, he goes up to the top rope, does his signature crossbody, flying crossbody onto Hercules, and he gets the 1, 2, 3.
Yes, it was a very good match. Not better than that tag team match we just watched.
Still, that tag team match is the definitely the best so far.
Still not getting to see Ricky at his best, but I know that in the next one, WrestleMania 3, there is a legendary Ricky the Dragon Steamboat versus Macho Man Randy Savage match.
Looking forward to that.
That I have been told, and I've never got to watch it, so I'm super excited about this, that it's considered one of the greatest matches of all time. So I am really looking forward to that.
Well, we'll be the judge of that when we watch it. I know I've seen it, but it's been several years since I've sat and watched it. But looking forward to that match. But we're moving kind of ahead of ourselves. So let's stick to WrestleMania 2. We're going to move on to the next match. Okay, so this next match is against two guys that I don't really remember either one of them.
And I think that's probably for the best.
Okay, so first we've got the adorable Adrian Adonis with, of course, complete legend, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, who managed multiple wrestlers at this time. I mean, he was always, heck, I think in WrestleMania 1 we saw him twice come out.
Yeah, it's not like nowadays when you're a manager, you manage one person or one group, and you stick to that group.
And you're kind of a part of that group. Like, I think Lita with the Hardy Boys, Team Extreme, she wasn't going around valeting for other tag teams.
Paul Bearer with Undertaker.
Right, he was either with Undertaker or he was with Kane.
But he usually wasn't a bunch of different ones all at once, yeah.
So anyhow, and then his opponent is Uncle Elmer.
Uh-huh.
Who's, he's in a big hillbilly get-up.
Yeah, he looked like something from, I work at a haunted house, or haunted trail to be exact, and both of these guys look like something from my trail. In fact, I'm the hillbilly guy that was that wrestler, and then a friend of mine comes out and wears a dress, has better makeup than Adrian Adonis, though. And this guy, Adrian Adonis, I mean, he came out with a dress. I mean, this was not a good moment for WWE in my book.
Well, keep in mind, this is 1986, so, a lot of stereotypes in 1986.
Well, we're doing a podcast in 2020, and it was a little rough to watch. I mean, it was not a terrible match. Adrian Adonis really oversells every move, and in that aspect, it was entertaining. But it really felt like WWE was going for the hillbilly beating the crap out of the cross-dressing male, and it just was almost uncomfortable to watch.
But I'd also like to point out this was definitely meant to be a comedy moment of
I know what
show.
they were going for.
This match was, I mean, I'm sure they all take it seriously, but this match felt like it was kind of a break from some serious matches, and they wanted to give the crowd something more kind of funny, and that's the hillbilly chasing the guy in makeup and a dress. And so they even rips the dress off halfway through the match.
Yeah, and I'm just pointing out that watching it in retrospect in 2020, this would not fly today.
No, probably not. So, but anyhow, so this match is just, like I said, it is what it is. It wasn't fantastic wrestling. Matter of fact, it was against two heavyweight guys that are both a little heavy set, and Elvira chose to point that out during the match. She even made a comment about, well, that's a lot of cellulite in that ring at one time. So she even kind of poked fun at how heavy set both of these guys are.
I tell you what, that Adonis, though, as big as he was, he sells those moves, and it was impressive on that aspect of the match. And I was very surprised they let Adonis be the winner of this match.
Oh, yeah, and there you go. That's another good point. They did let him win. They didn't just let him get beat down. And then
but he's also the heel.
Was the end. But, yeah, he won this match. I thought Uncle Elmer kind of looked slow, where Adonis, even for his size, was kind of moving around and kind of energetic.
Uncle Elmer looked like the guy from Punch Out.
Yeah.
He moved like him.
That is pretty good. Yeah, the
King Hippo.
King Hippo? No, I'm thinking, okay, so Super Punch Out.
Oh,
the
yeah,
sequel
yeah,
on
yeah.
Super Nintendo, there's a character, I'd have to Google and remember his name. Bear Hugger.
Bear Hugger.
Bear Hugger,
Yes.
that's his name. I didn't even have to Google it.
He looked exactly like Bear Hugger.
Oh, he did. It was like Bear Hugger was created based off of Uncle Elmer. I knew I'd seen this guy before.
Right.
I was Little Mac when I saw him. You know, I think he's actually like the first guy you face, or maybe
He was the first.
Guys.
I think he was the first guy you faced. Well,
he was in that first section of that belt. But I mean, we're kind of getting out of it. You know, we're gamers. It is what it is. So I mean, we're just kind of pointing things out that we noticed. But that Bear Hugger from Super Nintendo, that's exactly what he looked like. I didn't catch that until we're talking about it.
It just popped in my head.
Oh, that's. I mean, King Hippo. Don't get me wrong. That's more. I mean, who would you think the WWF equivalent of King Hippo would be?
I don't know if there is one.
No, don't know if there is
but
one.
Bear Hugger is exactly what
King Kong Bundy can't be too far off.
Oh, close.
You put I mean, say they had the King of the Ring back then, and they put a crown on his head. I mean, there you go. That's kind of King Hippo.
We'll know they stole that as soon as King Hippo goes down with one punch from Hulk Hogan and can't get up.
Yeah, we'll see. Stars flying over his head. It'd be fun to watch. Okay, so we're going to move on. It looks like they're about to interview Hulk Hogan right now and probably talk to him about his King Kong Bundy match coming up.
Yep.
Okay, so the next match is a tag team match, non-title. It's the Funk Brothers, Hoss Funk and Terry Funk, and their manager, Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart.
Another one.
Yeah. So Jimmy Hart does double duty, 2 matches in a row here.
Yes.
Now what does he do as a manager that does double duty? Does he walk back out and then walk back in with the new team, or does he just stay at ringside and just wait for the new team to come up? How does that work?
Well, I don't know.
Well, they didn't really have the camera on them, so I'm just kind of wondering how that worked out. Obviously, Terry Funk, if wrestling fans will remember, more really in ECW, and then for,
I remember him a lot with Mick Foley.
Yeah.
Or in Cactus Jack.
Chainsaw Charlie back in when Mick Foley
the Attitude Era.
Yeah, so he was around for a little bit there in the Attitude Era. So that's kind of where I learned who Terry Funk was, and then I went back and watched some ECW matches, and he's a crazy man. And and we'll talk more.
Yeah, this was pretty tame for Terry Funk.
Well, this is pretty tame, but there is a little hints of what to come, because there was some weapons used. There was a table, but we'll get into that when we talk about the match. We're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. But you see a little bit of shade of hardcore Terry Funk coming up in this match.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Jimmy Hart was just throwing the megaphone. Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, let's introduce the other team before we really going into the match here. So we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So their opponent is Junkyard Dog and Tito Santana. Now, Junkyard Dog was in my favorite match of WrestleMania 1.
Yes. It was and this was another good match.
And then Tito Santana, I think, was in your least. Probably both. It
was because I believe Tito Santana faced the Executioner.
Yeah, wasn't that your least favorite match of WrestleMania 1?
Yes, it was.
So anyhow, so we've got your least favorite match and my favorite match of WrestleMania 1 back in the ring against the Funk Brothers.
Tagged together.
And we'd also like to mention that all 4, and Jimmy Hart and the manager, everyone involved in this match is in the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
All of them are WWE legends.
All of them. So here we go. So the match is really, it's a nice back and forth tag match. This was a very fun match to watch. Jimmy Hart gets involved. He kicks.
He kept checking to see if they were all right.
Oh, no, come on. You don't check to see if somebody's all right with your foot.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, are you okay?"
Come on,
just giving him a little bit of check.
So anyhow, Jimmy Hart, he gets involved in this match out in the ringside area, and at one point this match gets kind of out of hand, where everybody's just kind of brawling, and Terry Funk gets, I think, whipped into, or he might have got suplexed into a table. Now, it doesn't break like we traditionally see tables getting used in later wrestling programs, but I mean, you saw his backside and leg really hit the edge of that table, and I believe he sustained an injury in this match over it, because he kind of wobbled around a lot after that happened.
They should have been disqualified right there. That was just unappreciated. I didn't appreciate that at all.
Blaze, you want to talk about disqualification? The way this match ended was complete and utter bullshit, and you know that because of the crowd reaction at the end of the match.
What are you talking about?
So let me let the listeners know that Jimmy Hart tosses his megaphone into the ring. Terry Funk hits Junkyard Dog over the head, and he's lights out. 1, 2, 3, and then the crowd starts chanting, "Bullshit, bullshit."
No, I feel like you read the room completely wrong.
I heard, Blaze.
Jimmy Hart was trying to tell something to the Junkyard Dog. And so
Is that what you believe?
Yeah, he throws the megaphone to Terry Funk so he could help him, tell him, and then he just kind of slipped a little bit and accidentally hit him.
Missed his mouth and put him over the forehead,
Yeah,
huh?
Absolutely. It was a complete accident. I don't know what your problem was.
Come
but
on
that
now.
was a clean win by Terry Funk and the Funk Brothers.
Absolutely not. They stole a win there at WrestleMania. So I'd also like to point out in this match, I was a little kind of disappointed, not by the match. The match was really good, great wrestling, a lot of back and forth, everybody got involved. Tito Santana definitely had a lot better match in this WrestleMania than he did against the Executioner in WrestleMania 1. But the one thing I was just a tad bit disappointed about was, number one, we didn't get to hear Junkyard Dog talk. That was entertaining to hear him talk in the first WrestleMania. And then secondly, we didn't see him get on all fours and do his headbutts.
No headbutts.
So a little couple things that I really like about Junkyard Dog was missing in this match. But, I mean, and I don't think he barked at anybody either.
No, I feel like this wasn't as good as the first WrestleMania match he was in.
No, not for him, but it was still a good match.
It was a good match.
He had a better WrestleMania 1 match, but this was a fun match.
It was a fun match.
So, and it was great seeing younger Terry Funk, because I'll be honest, I honestly forgot Terry Funk was in the WWF before his Chainsaw Charlie and Mick Foley days. I knew Terry Funk as an ECW wrestler that had jump shipped and came to WWF, and I don't remember him being...
He just came back.
Yeah, so I didn't remember him being a WWF wrestler back then. So that was kind of nice surprise for me watching this back and remembering, oh wow, Terry Funk was around WrestleMania 2. This is really cool, you know? So I really enjoyed seeing him. Absolutely, like I said, he didn't do some of his signature stuff, but I still enjoyed seeing Junkyard Dog. He was always one of, my favorites growing up, and this was a very fun match.
It was a really good match.
Okay, so it looks like they are bringing out the cage. So they're bringing it out in pieces.
So we're getting the first ever cage match in WrestleMania history in WrestleMania 2.
And keep in mind, this is before the days of the steel cage, the Hell in the Cell, the Elimination Chamber. This is the old school blue cage that you have to climb out to win this match. And I would believe. Now, we haven't watched the match yet, but that traditionally is a cage match. You have to climb out and escape.
Me personally, I get disappointed with the idea of being able to win a cage match with a pin. For me, it's always about, you gotta climb that cage. You gotta get to the top, you gotta get out. That's how you win a cage match. There's no stupid door that you can get out. It's climbing. You climb that cage and you escape.
I completely agree. I never cared for the cage matches where they would open the door. I always disagreed with that, but I agree with you. Traditionally, you climb up the top and get out. You're escaping the cage.
Yes.
I always felt that made that match a little bit more special. I know some of the matches didn't quite go that way, but I completely agree with you. Those are my favorite cage matches, when they have to climb. And I'll tell you what, I really like it when they decide, you know what? I could go down, but I think I'm going to jump back into the ring. But I don't know if we'll get any of that kind of high-flying
we were talking about Hulk Hogan and King Kong Bundy.
Yeah,
I don't expect anybody to jump off the top of that cage.
No, that might come later on in wrestling, but I really do enjoy it when people, like your Jeff Hardys jump off the top and do these death-defying jumps off the top of the steel cage. I always enjoy those.
I think this is going to be more likely having one of these men being rammed through the cage and breaking the cage. That's more likely in this match.
Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so now they're going to cut to, they say it's Hulk Hogan's personal gym. And they're going to have Mean Gene Okerlund talking while you see Hulk Hogan in the back with Hillbilly Jim. And it appeared to be his doctor while he's working out in his personal
gym. That's what they said, yeah.
So then at this point, Mean Gene Okerlund is explaining how this match came to be and the feud. He's really trying to build this up like this is personal. And then they cut back to a clip of, I'm guessing, a Saturday Night Main Event.
It was. They said it was a Saturday Night Main Event.
A Saturday Night Main Event program where Don Morocco was wrestling Hulk Hogan, and King Kong Bundy and Bobby Heenan comes out. And they orchestrate just a massive beatdown on Hogan. King Kong gets a few avalanches on him, and they say that Hogan got injured in this incident.
Yes.
So
they've been playing that up all pay-per-view that Hogan has got bruised ribs.
Yeah, every time they show Hogan, he's got tape over his ribs, and they're selling this injury that he is not 100%.
Correct.
So then, after they show the clip, they go back to Hogan's gym. Mean Gene Okerlund interviews Hulk Hogan. He even asks the doctor, Mean Gene does, asks the doctor, well, what do you think? And the doctor's like, I advise him not to wrestle. So they're really selling us that Hogan's not 100% and he shouldn't be in the steel cage with King Kong Bundy tonight.
Well, King Kong is a big guy.
Very big guy. So anyhow, so then they go back to ringside. They finally got the cage put up, which, as they showed before the gym footage and the recap footage, they showed guys carrying the cage out one by one for each side. So they had this in 4 pieces, carrying it out, and they're putting it together. And then you get King Kong Bundy coming out with Bobby the Brain Heenan with no music. Just a resounding amount of boos facing him, and he's just walking out like just a monster. No music, though.
Yeah.
So then, do what?
Oh, I was saying main event, and your challenger has nothing.
Nothing. So he's the challenger. So then here comes the iconic Real American music, and here comes Hulk Hogan. for some reason, he's got the bandana on his head, and the excess of the bandana he has in his mouth. I don't understand what that was about, but
I believe those are tasty treats.
I guess he just had to nibble on the end of the bandana for some reason. So he comes out to the ring with his iconic music, and he's got the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship around his waist. The announcer says this is for the World Heavyweights Championship.
Correct.
So they get them both locked in the cage. Hogan, instead of going through the door of the cage, he decides to climb up from the outside into the inside of the cage, and then this match is underway. Now, I'll tell you what, this was awesome. It was two heavyweights going blow for a while there, and it was just, you could just feel how massive of a match this was. It was really fun to watch. Hogan even threw King Kong Bundy into the cage, and King Kong's bleeding from the forehead, so the rest of the match, around his eyes and everything is all red, just with blood, and this just felt personal. Hogan, as you pointed out, even did some things that most faces probably would not do.
Yeah, he felt a little heelish here. First off, he takes King Kong Bundy's singlet, which I've never seen this before, I don't think. But he took his singlet and started choking him with his own singlet, with his arm part of his singlet. He was climbing out of the cage, and instead of climbing out, he decides to take his foot and choke King Kong Bundy on the rope, instead of escaping and then coming down to do more damage. He did quite a bit of choking and
back scratching.
Yeah.
Did the whole raking on the back.
Yeah.
But there was a time where King Kong looked like he had this match handled for a little while, but then, of course, anybody who's ever watched a Hulk Hogan match, at one point, I think he just gets punched by King Kong Bundy, and Hogan starts doing the shake.
No, it wasn't a punch.
What was it?
Oh, he did the avalanche. He ran into the corner of the ring and gave him the avalanche, where he jumps up and lands on him against the ring post. And then Hogan gave the shaking of the head and is like, "Oh, brother."
Yeah, he
power
hawks up.
The hawk up, yeah.
He definitely hawks up, does the whole shaking, and points at King Kong Bundy, and it's on. You've pissed off Hogan and all the millions of Hulkamaniacs out there.
Yeah, and I wanted to point out just something I noticed. And, I've watched wrestling for a long time, so I kind of see these things. You mentioned a botch earlier, and this isn't a botch, but King Kong Bundy is bleeding profusely out of his forehead, and Hogan is doing punches to his forehead. Did you happen to notice Hogan's hands were super clean after that?
No, actually, I noticed some blood on his knuckles.
Oh, I didn't notice.
He must have wiped it off, because immediately afterwards, he did have blood on his knuckles. He must have wiped it off on his trunks or something.
Oh, well, I thought I didn't see any blood, so...
No, he definitely had blood on him.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Well, we'll have to go back and show it to you. So, anyhow, this match, he hawks up, knocks King Kong Bundy down, and gives the atomic leg drop. Then he starts climbing the cage, and King Kong gets up, tries to stop him, and then Hawk kicks him in the face, knocks him down again, climbs over top, escapes the cage. He retains the World Heavyweight Championship.
Well, then he did something that I did not like at all. Bobby the Brain Heenan was just there, trying to be a good guy, seeing how he's doing it, and Hulk just attacks him.
Now, after everything rude. He was put through, Bobby the Brain Heenan orchestrated that fight, or that beatdown that caused Hogan to have the hurt ribs. So it was time for Bobby the Brain Heenan to get his comeuppance.
No. Bobby the Brain Heenan is a wrestler. He is not a wrestler. He is a manager, and Hulk Hogan should respect that. respect the fact that Bobby the Brain, he doesn't know how to wrestle.
Well, then Bobby the Brain Heenan should stay out of Hogan's business if he doesn't want to get, beat down by Hogan. So Hogan starts chasing him around the steel cage, and Bobby the Brain Heenan, like the coward he is, runs into the cage and tries to hold the door shut, trying not to let Hogan in, because he knows Hogan's coming. But what does Hogan do? He's got the force. He rips that open, even though Heenan's holding on to it. He gets in there, and he takes care of business, and he makes sure he knows he didn't appreciate that beatdown 5 weeks ago.
Well, he, once again, not a wrestler. What would you do if you had those 64-inch pythons chasing you around the ring? That's not cowardly. That's smart. That's trying to stay alive.
What I would do? I wouldn't be messing with the guy with the 64-inch pythons to begin with. I'd keep my nose out of his business, and I wouldn't be having guys beat him down in the ring.
I just think that Hogan should show a little bit more class.
Okay, well, agree to disagree. So here we...
Favorite match of the night.
Here we go. This is the end of WrestleMania 2. It felt bigger, better, and more epic than WrestleMania 1. So here, let's go ahead, and before we move on to our WrestleMania rankings, why don't we move on to Blaze? What was your favorite match in WrestleMania 2?
There was a decent amount of good matches in this one. I think what I'm going to go with is that tag match. Tag team title match.
Against the British Bulldogs and the Dream Team.
The Dream Team and British Bulldogs. I'm going to have to go with that. Was probably... I liked seeing Macho Man, so my heart wants to go with that, but is pure match-wise, the tag team match was a better match.
Okay, well, I agree with you. That match was phenomenal, and it was going to be my favorite match too. But actually, I'm going to have to go with the main event. The Hogan King Kong Bundy match lived up to the build-up, the personalness of it, and it was just I thought it was an awesome match, and I love cage matches. So that, for me, just was epic, and until that match, I was also going to go with the tag team championship match, but for me, this just put the cherry on top for me for WrestleMania.
Worst match of the night.
Now, okay, so that is your favorite match. What was your worst match of WrestleMania 2?
I think this is a simple one. This is easy. It's the one that, well, I almost found offensive. And that is the match between the Hillbilly and Adonis.
Okay, so you're saying Adrian Adonis and Uncle Elmer.
Yes.
Okay,
that was my least favorite match.
For once, we're going to agree on this because that was also my least favorite match. I felt it was more meant for comedy than it was pure wrestling, and it was just one of those kind of, we've had a really good WrestleMania, we just kind of need to tone the crowd down before we move on to the end of the show. It just didn't feel as epic as some of these other matches, and it really didn't have two more familiar guys, legends of wrestling, two forgotten guys.
Yeah, there was a lot of legends in this WrestleMania. So, yeah, these two were forgotten in history, and quite frankly, I'm glad they were forgotten in history. I mean, the Adonis guy, he did sell moves pretty well, but it was a little uncomfortable to watch in 2020.
WrestleMania rankings.
Gotcha. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our WrestleMania rankings. I know this is going to be short, and it's probably very, very predictable at this point, but this is something we would like to do at the end of every WrestleMania.
Well, every pay-per-view.
Are we going to rank pay-per-views?
No. I was thinking we would rank them
per the pay-per-view.
Per pay-per-view. So all WrestleManias will ranked. Survivor Series will be ranked separately.
Okay. I agree with that. So we're going to keep them categorized in the show that they are so we can just rank WrestleManias, because it's kind of hard to compare the other pay-per-views, because WrestleMania is usually just so much bigger and better and epic than the other three.
Plus,
although the other three are very fun.
Plus, if you prefer Survivor Series matches or Royal Rumble matches, that one's going to take your heart. It's better to compare them with their own types.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's going to be fun, ranking Royal Rumbles. Which Royal Rumbles are going to be better than others, and that is fun. And then later on in WWF, when it becomes WWE, you get a lot of legends coming back and a lot of surprises.
A lot of surprise
so that's going to be really, really fun.
I don't know if there's going to be a lot of surprise entrances. Well, Andy Kaufman might show up in one of these. I can't remember when he wrestled, but he wrestled in the 80s.
I don't know if he's in any of the WrestleManias or not. I can't remember, but I know he had a short period where he kind of dealt with Jerry the King Lawler.
Yeah, he would.
And I think that might have been before WrestleMania even, though.
I'll have to look that up, but yeah,
we'll have to fact check that.
He used to wrestle women and saying he was from Hollywood. He was very charismatic.
Yeah, because that was about the birth of Saturday Night Live, which was around 75, I believe.
You might be right.
So I think that was pre-WrestleMania when he got involved with wrestling.
Yeah, he might have died in 82. He died in the 80s.
So yeah, I don't think we're going to get an Andy Kaufman zombie to join the Royal Rumble match. I don't think that's going to happen, Blaze. Once again, you're showing how idiotic you are, but hopefully that doesn't affect the listeners. Hopefully you guys still come back and listen to us. So before we wrap this up, we have a huge shout out we'd like to give, and that is to Matt Russell. Matt, we greatly appreciate and was just honored, shocked to find out you have donated to the show. I hope we do you justice, and we will help build the show with that money. Thank you,
first subscriber of the Rage and Blaze show.
Yeah, he's the first financial subscriber to the Rage and Blaze show, and we want to give you a huge shout out and a huge thank you. Greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Okay, so this is the end of our show. Please join us on the next episode when we rewatch WrestleMania 3, and we have our special guest Warren come onto the show to talk all things wrestling toys and what it's like to be a giant. So that should be fun. And then after that, we'll be moving on to 1987 Survivor Series. We'll start working on the other pay-per-views because we wanted to do WrestleManias up until those other pay-per-views became a thing, which is...
We wanted all the pay-per-views in order of when they were released, when they happened, and... WrestleMania was a thing for 3 years until we got Survivor Series, and then I believe after Survivor Series we'll have
literally
Royal Rumble.
After Royal Rumble in '88, but that was in January, so it feels like a different year. I mean, it's labeled as a different year, but it all kind of flowed. Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, WrestleMania 4, and then we'll get a SummerSlam after that, I believe.
So we'll start rotating the pay-per-views after this last WrestleMania.
So yeah, this should be really fun because we get to revisit some classic pay-per-views with some new concepts. The the Survivor Series 4-on-4 match. We get to see the 30-man Royal Rumble, which I believe in 1988, the first Royal Rumble, actually, I believe only had 20 men. But we will.
I believe that's what it says. Yeah,
we will be watching that. That should be fun. And then, of course, SummerSlam is kind of the summer version of WrestleMania. Not really any major themes, just kind of middle of summer, and they just put on a show that they try to, match the excitement of WrestleMania for that time of the year. So this is going to be fun. I hope you all continue to listen. I want to give a huge thank you to anybody who's been listening, following, and remember we have that Facebook page, The Rage and Blaze Show. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram now.
Oh, correction from last episode. My Twitter is at Dragon Blazer Pro, not production. It ends at pro because I wasn't able to make that long of a Twitter.
Okay, and then my Twitter account is at Ricky Rayberg. And I did not change mine to anything crazy, but I will be advertising on there. And pretty soon, I believe we are in the works of trying to get on YouTube. So hopefully we can get on there soon.
I'm still learning all this.
So, yeah, this is new to us. We're still working on it. But we are hopefully going to be getting on YouTube soon, so keep an eye on that. Also, don't forget to listen to us and subscribe. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, and of course, Anchor. So don't forget to listen to us on your favorite podcasting platform.
We're still trying to publish to other places, so we'll keep you informed when we show up on different platforms.
So that's the end of this show. I want to thank you all for listening. And I am Rage.
And I'm Blaze.
See you next time.
Auf Wiedersehen.
And your winners, and still tag team champions of podcast, The Rage
And Blaze Show.
Thank you for listening.
Good night.
Hey everyone, this is Blaze from the Rage and Blaze and the Boomer and Blaze Show. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more wrestling content.